Good morning, and welcome back to the Healing Incubator podcast. I am your host, Kiana F. Brown, the forgiveness expert. Some may call me Coach Kiana, some may call me Kiki, and some may call me, hey, my groomer. But however, I am here and I am excited to be here with you this morning. This is another opportunity that we get to tap into the truth, forgiveness, and healing here on the Healing Incubator podcast. So I am excited about what we're going to share this morning. The topic again, we're diving into am I loving myself and how to love myself over the next couple of weeks. This is something that is so monumental. Some of us don't even realize that we are not loving ourselves, that we are not taking care of ourselves in those capacities. And so it is time to do that. So if you're tuning in right now, I see people are tuning in. I have no idea where you're tuning in from, but I want to welcome you. We are streaming on about 6 different platforms this morning. And also this is going to be audibly shown, audibly shared on the podcast Healing Incubator. So I just want to thank all of you for tuning in. But right now at this time, if you could please share this message to help someone and inspire them in the area of loving themselves this morning. And so you can do that by simply just hitting your share button. I don't know what type of device you're on, but you can do that. You can share that with your community. Thank you for sharing. You can share that with your community so that they can tap into this healing journey that we're going on through the next couple of weeks with how to love yourself. And this morning, we're going to be talking about voices in my head. I know that some of you are like giving me a virtual high five, a clap, a snap, anything like that, because we know that there are a lot of voices in our heads, and we have so much internal dialogue that it prohibits us from actually having the successful lives that we should have in the area of healing. And so for those of you who are watching the replay, I don't want to forget you. I love you equally. I want you to go ahead and put in the chat or the feed that hashtag I'm ready to heal. Hashtag I'm ready to heal. That's what we're here about in this podcast. That's why we're here, because we want to provoke healing, not just within ourselves, but share it to the nation globally. So those people who are tuning in on the replay, I love you all as well. If you want me to know who you are, go ahead and put your name in there, where you are chiming in from. And also, if you have something to say, something that you want to comment on, go ahead and do that. I love to keep the conversation going well after the broadcast has aired. And I see those people typing in, I'm ready to heal. I'm ready to heal. So awesome. Let's go ahead and get up in the air. I want to go back a little bit to last week. South Carolina is in the house. Good morning. I want to go back to last week. There was a question that I asked, and that question was, am I loving myself? Am I loving myself? And so what I wanted you all to do last week was to ask yourself that question and to get in a space of quietness so that you can actually hear what you're asking yourself. You know, so many times we ask questions, and we ask God a question. We pray to God, but we don't take the moment to sit still and listen to what God is saying to us, or even listen to the question that we've asked our own self. And so I hope and pray that you have done that, and you understood the areas of life that you are lacking in love in, and that you've decided that you were going to take the challenge, and you were going to take the time to not only to hear yourself and to understand those areas that you were lacking love in for yourself, but you were going to make forth some effort to say, yes, I see that this is where I'm lacking in self-love, but I am going to tune in next week so that I can get a little bit more information on how I can begin to love myself in those areas. Now, of course, I have studied and done things of that nature, but for me, the prime example of my learning vehicle has been my life. And so I wanted to share a little bit of that with you all. And over time, I realized that I had a lack of self-love in the area of health in my life. But, you know, it wasn't just the effect of that that I didn't love myself in that area, but it really affected a multitude of areas in my life. It affected my confidence, it affected my finances, and it affected my emotional care. I use an easy mechanism that most of us do, right? We don't even sometimes realize that we're doing it, but we blame other people. And that's a mechanism and a tool that we use so that we can say, hey, well, it's not my reason, my fault. Some of us as mothers in our health journey, we say, well, I'm busy with my child and I have to do this and I don't have enough time to do that. But we do have enough time. We make the time. There are some people out here that are killing it and success and in the areas of their life. And we look at them and we're like, wow, oh my goodness, how are they doing all of this? How are they accomplishing all of this time? And we all have the same 24 hours in a day. Well, my sir, my ma'am, what I want to tell you is that they make the time. They make themselves a priority. And by making themselves a priority, that's how they're showing love for themselves. Now, let's look at the word priority, because I've been talking about priorities. When we look at that word priority, if we break it down to the root word prior means before. And so we have to make sure that before anything else we do, that we are sharing love and devoting love to ourselves so that we can be wholly fulfilled to go out and help other people, to be a good mom, to be a good business owner, to be a good friend, to be a good sister, to be a good daughter. All of those things come in effect with how you line up your priority. And so remembering that priority means, the root word prior means before. So before we hit all of those other tasks, we have to learn to take care of ourselves first. And so I no longer could blame everyone else. And so I realized that, I had a blaming mechanism, that tool that I used with my father, because of how I grew up, the things that I did in my past. I blamed my father for that. But as I grew older and realized what the system that I was living through was, not just blaming my father, but now there were new faces that I was blaming instead of my father. And so it shifted from the blame going towards him to the blame going towards other people and other things. And so even though the face changed, even though the people changed, that did not change my actions. I had the same actions, and that was all due to the voices that were in my head. The problem was not the people outside. It was actually my internal dialogue, and that was running my life. I'm not good enough. Those are some of the statements that we make. I really don't like how I look. I beat myself up because, if I would have made better decisions in my past, I might be just a little bit further in life right now. And there's so much negative talk that we share with inside of ourselves that, it's hard for us to get it together. We can't get it together because it's just like so much nagging that we do. Sometimes we allow for people's comments and statements to run our lives, when we say, I'm not going to let you have control over me. But a lot of the times it's not even the people outside that are having control over you. It's the voices that are in your head. And so why is it okay for us to tear ourselves down? Now let's get truthful and let's get honest this morning, because we're here on the Healing Incubator podcast. If you're just tuning in, thank you. Stick around, because we're sharing some good information about the voices in our head, because we're going through this series of tapping in to how to love ourselves. And so we were just talking about the tearing our own selves down. I want you to really think about that. And if you really think about that, it's time to always to stop looking for outside validation. Of course, we always hear other people encourage us and do things like that. But there's some people that are talking about us and that we are so quick to shoot them down, to say, you can't talk about me this way. I won't accept you talking to me this way. But however, in the interim of things, what do? We have that same negative talk that we're beating somebody up about verbally or mentally, because we're still thinking about things. And we're doing it to ourselves. And so why are we not beating ourselves up from the own internal dialogue that we have, from the own conversation that we're having with ourselves? And so if we take the time to realize that we don't just let the outside world play a part in the process of our life, but we do a lot of this to ourselves. And so one of the things that I like to use in that manner, instead of tearing myself down with my internal voice, that internal dialogue, people say use affirmations with the AFFOR, and so that's statements that you use, you share them, I am great, I am beautiful, I am this, I am that. But what I want us to take with us is affirmations, that we're going to affirm what we're going to do. And by affirming it, we're going to put forth action towards that conversation that we're having internally. And so how do we affirm that? What we say is, no, I am beautiful. And so when you say I am beautiful, just doesn't mean, putting on makeup. That just doesn't mean having on the finest threads or, the prettiest bling bling of earrings. I am beautiful means that you're taking time to care about how you feel on the inside, because how you feel on the inside is a reflection of what you produce on the outside. And so now it's time to take a deeper look in the mirror, to look past what you see on the surface so that you can get to the matters of your heart. And that is where you'll find the beauty. That is where you'll find the lovely, gorgeous Kiana, or the lovely, gorgeous you, whoever's tuning in or listening into this podcast. And so by doing that, we're going to put forth the action. That means taking the time to sit there, taking the time to understand who you are and what about you is beautiful. What about you is beautiful? Good morning, Mississippi is in the house. What about you is beautiful? Well, what's beautiful is the way that God lives inside of me. What's beautiful is how God speaks to me. What's beautiful is how I'm able to then share a message that God shared with me in my heart. And so no longer can we just look at the physical aspect of what beauty is. We have to get deep inside of ourselves to understand the true beauty that God has placed within each and every one of us. Sometimes we don't even understand how magnificent we are, but yet we have that self-negative talk where we're tearing ourselves down, where yet we better not let someone else do it, but we're so quick and easy to do it ourselves. And I want you all to affirm yourself by putting forth that goal. And so if it's your health goal that you want to affirm yourself in, and you say, hey, I don't like the way that I look, by affirming yourself, you're going to make a goal, you're going to set a goal, and you're going to stick by that goal, and then you're going to see your results. And that's how you affirm it. Not just speak about it and say, oh, I'm going to be healthy, but affirm what you're going to be. And I know that it may sound easier to say that I'm going to do all of these things, but after we've done all of these things, we've become so much of an expert of tearing ourselves down that we now need to become an expert of building ourselves up. Let's create a process, create a routine where your self-negative talk is no longer. I personally pray for conviction, right? And so what do I mean? That's my tool. I pray for conviction. I pray that God removes the negative voices from my head. So immediately when I start to do that negative self-talk, the first thing that comes right after that is, God, please change my thought pattern. God, I am not what I say I am. I am more than that. I am a conqueror through Jesus Christ, who has strengthened me. And so we have to remember that we can change the trajectory of our thought process if we're convicted immediately to make that change. We can no longer wallow in what was. We can no longer wallow in pity. We are strong. We are believers. We are warriors. We are healing today. Hashtag I'm ready to heal. We are here in the season where we are stepping out, and we are no longer going to let you talk about us, and we're no longer going to allow ourselves. And that is one of the ways that we create and show ourselves self-love. Out of many of the times that I've had those dialogues with myself, I was able to shift. I was able to change, and my mindset changed. And so that's what we are with learning to love ourselves. We need to know that in everything that we do, that there can be a change, that it does not have to stay the same. One of the other things that I love to do when I'm having self-negative talk, I'll go to YouTube. Or you can go to YouTube and find past Healing Incubator shows or past Forgiveness Friday shows, or whatever your medium is for inspiration and motivation, and listen to those things so that you can shift where you are mentally, physically, and emotionally. A lot of the times people don't understand that you do not have to be stuck in a place because you're physically in that place. Some of you know my testimony about prison. I was in prison for 4 years. And just because I was there, it did not mean that my mind had to be incarcerated. Although my body was there, my mind was free because I was able to create. I was able to do different things. I was able to learn how to do small things in that place where some would probably be like, oh my goodness, I can't make it. I was able to uplift myself. And that's another way of sharing love and showing love and loving yourself. So no matter what, there are all types of things that you can do to remove yourself from the voices in your head, from the self-negative talk. You can stop and pray to God. You can just, wherever you are, I find that the conversations that we have with other people, sometimes we go to them and we're like, I'm having this problem, I'm having this issue, but you need to start having a conversation with God. And you don't have to pick up the phone. You don't have to, pull out your telephone or your pads or your things like that and start typing. All you have to do is just start having that dialogue with him. And that can help shift your mind. Now, so doing this also comes with renewing your mind, right? We're talking about that. We're talking about changing your mind. How can you remove the self-negative talk, the negative dialogue conversation? I want to read for your hearing scriptures, Romans 12:2. And this scripture says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. Then you will be able to test and approve that what God's will is. It is good, pleasing, and perfect. Pleasing, that is good. That is good. So remind yourself, and that just stuck out to me right now, that when you renew your mind, you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good will, is pleasing, and his perfect. So think about that self-negative talk that you do. That self-negative talk that you do. Is that good? Is that pleasing? Is that in the will of God? So we have to be reminded that if we're kingdom citizens, and that's what, some of us here on the podcast are kingdom citizens, and we're living according to the will of God, which means we're living according to the scripture, to the word that's written, the living word that's written, then is that good? And so you have to question yourself that, all of these negative things that I'm saying, these voices that I'm hearing in my head, they cannot clearly be coming from God. They cannot clearly be coming from God, because that's not good. The will of God is a good will. And negative self-talk that is beating you up, that is damaging your confidence, your self-esteem, that's not good. And so that is most definitely not a way to show love to yourself, to say, self, I love you, by continuing to have a negative conversation that is against what you believe in, because your Father in heaven says that it's good and that his will is perfect. And so nothing out of that says anything about loving me when I'm beating myself up, right? So you have to remember those things. You want to get into the space of that. Now, that also means that this is not just the world outside of us, but the world within us, right? Because it said it in Romans right there. Don't be transformed. Let me go back to this. It says, do not be conformed to the pattern of this world, right? And so what I'm meaning by that, it doesn't just mean the world that's on the outside, because there's a whole internal world that's going on inside of us. We are body, we are spirit, we're flesh, right? right? We have all of those things going on inside of us. There's a whole world inside of us. And sometimes in this world, there's a war inside of this temple. And we have to go against that because that is not the will of God. The will of God is for us to live in peace, peace and harmony, meaning that you are at peace and harmony in your body and in your mind. So when it says don't be conformed to this world, not just the world that's outside of us externally, but the world that's inside of us internally. Okay, now let's look at Mark 2:21. It says, no one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment. Otherwise, the patch pulls away from it, the new from the old, and a worse tear becomes the result. And so what we want to think about in this scripture, Mark 2:21, it says, no one sews a patch of unshrunk cloth on an old garment, right? You're not going to sew a new patch onto an old garment. The patch pulls away from it, then the new from the old, and there's a worse tear. So when we look at that scripture, that tells us that there has to be some renewing, right? That there has to be something new. We have to have a new mindset. We can't keep the same old ideologies, the old thoughts, the old processes, and mix them with the new. Because what's going to happen, there's going to be a worse tear, right? And so if there's a worse tear, then what's going on with that conversation in your head, that dialogue? 1 minute I'm good, I'm great, I'm this, I'm that, positive talk. And then the next moment, I'm not, I'm the worst. It's like you have two entities living inside of your head. Do not take the old with the new and mix it. You want to restore yourself, have a new mind, that you're not talking negative to yourself, that you're always encouraging yourself no matter what. Now, come on, let's be truthful. Let's be honest. We're human and we are flesh and we have moments, right? But sometimes we take those moments and we stretch them all the way out. I mean, we stretch them all the way out, just like an elastic rubber band. I talk about my skin, right? Sometimes, because a lot of you know that I deal with the battle of losing weight. And so while dealing with that, I said that my skin is just like a rubber band that you stretch out that never pops back in. It never pops back in. And so that's what we do with our mind when we don't, renew it. It stretches out and it never pops back in. And then we have all of this stuff going on, but we have to renew it. We have to make our mind like new elasticity, right? It's a newness to us. We're gonna pop back. We're gonna pop back. We're not gonna let those moments of those bad conversations draw out to where they never come back again. Right? We don't want it to draw out to where it takes us into a place of insanity. We don't want it to go out where it takes us to a place of depression. We don't want it to pull out where it takes us to a place of no return, a point of no return. There are so many people that you look at and you say, oh, well, they had it together and, they were doing good and they were doing this, but all the while inside they had that internal dialogue that stretched them out, just like that old wineskin, just like that old rubber band, that they could not get to a place of where they were able to come back because they allowed for that moment to invade their life, to become not just a moment, but to become a part of their everyday process. And so when we look at this, we have to realize that the conversation, the dialogue that we have within ourselves is one that needs to change. That's one that needs not to have the old with the new, that needs to be the one that is not stuck in the moment where it's stretching it out and where it can't come back. And we need to realize that shifting that is how we say, Kiana, I love you. Kiana, you are a beautiful creation of God. Kiana, you will do great and wonderful works for the kingdom. Kiana, everything that you place your hands on will be blessed. And that is the conversation that you need to have with yourself. So one, I want you to realize that you can shift the trajectory of your thought process. You can shift that conversation in your head. That conversation does not have to be one that is stretched out to where those moments of impure thoughts last and go with you for a lifetime. You can change that. And you can do that by doing some of the simple steps that, I said that I've done. That's my dog, if you hear him barking. Some of the things that I've done. And the things is to pray, to stop, to be convicted, to change the way that you think immediately. Right? I tell myself, no, you're not going to think this way, Kiana. Today is not going to be that way. You're going to change. This is not going to be a bad day. You walk into an environment where it feels like it's not conducive for love. It feels like it's not conducive for peace. As soon as you walk into the atmosphere, God, shift and change everything that's in this environment, because today is going to be a blessed day. Today is going to be a prosperous day. Today, there will be no bickering in this environment. And we have the right to do that. Speak into the atmosphere so that it can be so. Right? And there's another tool that you can use. If you're not that good at changing like that, you can listen to something that will take your thought away from that negativity. You can listen to something, whatever your medium is, your outlet for inspiration, you can go there. If you have a friend that's a counterpart that you all encourage each other, pick up that phone, tell them, hey, this is, these are my thoughts this morning. And I know that they're not right. We need to pray against this. We need to talk against this. We need to uplift one another. So there are many things that you can do to shift that internal conversation. But the first thing that you have to realize to do that when you're doing that is you're not loving yourself. And so that's what we're working on. We're starting on piece by piece of how to love myself, piece by piece of how to change and shift where I am so that I don't just love myself in pieces, right? We love ourselves in pieces. We love this about ourselves. We love that about ourselves. Oh, but we don't love that part. We don't really agree with that. And so how do we shift those things? And that's what we're talking about over the next couple of weeks. If you weren't here, this is your first time tuning into this podcast. I'll go back and say it again. Last week, what we talked about was, am I loving myself? Honestly, are you really loving yourself? And how we were going to get to that realization was to be in a moment of quietness, to be still, to listen, not just to listen to ourselves, but to also listen to what God is telling us, to illuminate the things that are in ourselves. We're living these busy, busy lives where it's so hard for us to do one thing, and that's just take a moment to meditate, right? When we say meditate, we're not talking about meditating in all of these other different realms and things like that. You're trying to meditate to become one with God, to become one with yourself, so that you can understand yourself, so that you can listen, so that you can hear what directions are. And so you can see and understand where there are areas that you may be lacking in self-love. Right. And so that's what we did last week. And so this week, what I want you all to do, I want you, after you've had that realization and you said, well, this is an area that I'm really not loving myself in. I want you to do something different this week with that area. Do what's difficult. Do the hard thing and do it daily. Taking the time to work on you is what you really need to do. If you want to say, I love all of me, we want to take the time to do what's hard. Now, one of the things that I've been taking the time to do every day, y'all see my eyes, for those of you can see me every day, is I've been getting up in the morning and I've been exercising. I mean, like every day. Yeah, sure, I walk. I was talking to Apostle Howard, and we were talking about losing weight. And in talking about that, she says you have to do something that is going to shift your body, like shock your body, because I'm an avid walker. I walk, I hike, I do all of these things. And I'm like, well, why is, the weight not coming off? And so as a result of listening to her, I added different regimens to my morning workout. Now, mind you, it's a hard thing. It's a difficult thing for me to get up and do that, because when I get up in the morning, and I start to do those things, it's like, oh my goodness, like I'm like halfway in it, y'all. And I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. But there's that push that I know if I don't do something that's difficult, if I don't do the hard thing, then nothing is going to change. And I've been down this road before, right? How many of us have done things and we've excelled at it and then we've regressed, and now we're trying to get back into that space and we don't want to put the work in, but we knew, and sometimes you can't even remember, like, did I really go through all this the last time? I don't remember doing all of this. But however, you still have to do it, because at the end of the day, if there is, what is it? No pain, no gain. If you don't have any pain, you will not gain the results that you want. And that's in any area of your life. And so we're talking about self-love. Good morning, self-love. How are you going to be able to change that internal dialogue, that internal conversation? We talked about it last week. I see some people just tuning in really real quick. I'm going to recap it. So last week we talked about getting quiet so that you can understand the areas that you're not loving yourself in. And this week, what I want you to do is do that hard thing that where you realize the love is not there, that there's a lack of love. Do that hard thing that's going to help change that process for you. So guys, I am so excited that you all are tuning in. There's so many people tuning in from different platforms. I want to say good morning, good afternoon, and to those people who are replay watchers and listeners, because this is visually and audibly. I just want to say that I love you all, and I pray that you have a blessed and beautiful day, because there's nothing like getting to your truth, getting to your healing through the power of forgiveness. So guys, be blessed, and thank you for celebrating this. What y'all already know, this is my national holiday, Forgiveness Friday. Thank you for celebrating it with me. And just to let you all know, I will be back next week. I will be back the week after that, and the week after that, and the week after that, because we're dealing with this thing called love, and we're dealing with it as it pertains to loving ourselves. We have been in a season where there has been so much death and turmoil all around us. And some of the love that we've had for ourselves has slipped away. We've allowed for the external world to infect the internal world. And it's now time to get our love back. It's time to get your love back. So thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to share this out. And I will see you all next week. Bye, guys.